We're having a little discussion here with some of our honorees for tonight. They are, in the right order, Lotta Viglius-Wolf and Breed Dooley, Thomas Silen, and Sun Shuang from the SMG Shanghai Audiovisual Group. It's a pleasure to have you all here tonight. I would like to start immediately with Lotta. Congratulations on the win for tonight on Pulled from the Archives, Smoking. I would like to ask you about how significant archives have been in shaping your career.
Actually, the archive...
If you can just get the mic, yes.
Okay. The archive has always been there, but only as a very, very small part. And this is the first time we made a whole program that is based on archive footage.
And, you know, the reasons behind that bold leap in your career was what? What was about the archives that you found that stirred you so much and stirred you in that direction?
Actually, we had a workshop with the theme Cultural Heritage. And then we have a lot of brainstormings about archive, because one aim was to make programs with a lot of archive use. Mm-hmm. And then we made a pilot, and actually this pilot is this program Pulled from the Archive about smoking. And after that we made 16 programs, and next year we will make more of them.
Excellent. My next question is to Breed. Breed, how does one do research using archival documents?
Well, in relation to this particular project
yes,
that we were nominated for, well, we didn't actually do any research to begin with. This was an accident of serendipity. I think I just said in my acceptance speech, such as it was, that this project sort of landed on our laps, really. Archives everywhere have a history, which is not a very good one, which is that they deleted archives in the very early days of television. So for most broadcasters who would have started in the late 50s and the early 60s, there is virtually no evidence, visual evidence, other than photographs and documents of the actual programs that were broadcast. Anything that was live, that went out from a studio, was usually maybe recorded onto a tape and then deleted and recorded over. And that's an important message from the archives, because it's not that the archives did that, the archives didn't exist. So researching this program was researching why, after 50 years, a program of this kind turned up. And we still really don't know why it survived, but the story in terms of research is that we had an actual PhD researcher working with us on a project which was connected to FIAT, the Television Studies Commission. And he had spotted this program sitting in a vault in a sister broadcaster in the north of Ireland. And he thought, oh, that looks interesting. And he saw the title on the spine of the film, and he told us about it. And from there we did the research to follow up. Could it be what we think it is? Is it possible? There are no other programs surviving of that particular television series. So for us, it was a fantastic find.
That is quite
so I'm not sure I answered
unusual.
Your question, but
no, it does.
That is the kind of research that was involved here.
Very unusual. And how was the reception of the school around the corner in general?
It was amazing, truly amazing. And I think it was the first time ever that the archives took hold of something like this as a story and ran with it. So we took the idea that we'd found this incredible gem, this lost treasure, but we needed to tell people about it. So we work in a broadcasting environment. We're broadcasters. We work in archives, we work in broadcasting. So we used every means at our disposal. We talked to our news departments, we talked to programs which ran radio shows where people like to phone in and listen and hear things and say, I know that. So we looked for the people who were in the films. And we asked the radio presenters to help us find those children. And we found them. We found 3 of them. and they became part of the story, and the story grew. So I suppose, you know, that's really how we managed to spark the imagination of a whole nation about a program that they knew about in their memory, hadn't seen, most of them, because unless you were there on the spot in 1962, you wouldn't have seen that film.
It suddenly triggers a sense of nostalgia, I suppose, for people who are seeing that. It's like a trip down memory lane, and this is probably why it holds a certain value, a certain...
Yeah, I think in the true meaning of the word nostalgia, it's not, you know, it's in the sense that it's real for people as well. The memories connected to family, connected to culture, connected to history, connected to a country in Ireland that was very different in the 1960s
Sure.
to the lens of the camera that was looking at it now with the people who were there in the 1990s. And the archive travelled with the news crews and travelled with our magazine programmes and documented these people as they are now and got them to talk about their life stories and their histories. So it created a whole new archive, really, at the end of the day as well. So a nostalgia, but also bringing that whole idea of documenting the past right up to date.
I promise, Miu Miu, the question will not be very difficult. Of course, your work embodies the art of traditional Beijing opera as China's intangible cultural heritage. What I would like to ask Sun is to tell us about some of the challenges that he faced in finding those archives of the master performer, Mr. Sun Yang.
The materials of the film is preserved in Shanghai Audio and Video Archive. Many materials is older than my grandfather's.
So they're accessible, they're easy for everyone to find.
I'm sorry, I will speak Chinese next. 这些资料呢，非常的不容易找到。因为这些老艺术家、这些大师，他们每一次演出可能会在不同的年代，或者是在不同的国家。他可能会在纽约，也有可能在中国的北京。我们会去把这些资料都搜集起来，然后尽量的按一定的顺序来编排。同时，我们在使用的时候会选择当中最确切的年份、最确切的那一个资料来表现。
Miu Miu?
He said that this archives is not easy to find. We found it in the opera, in the Beijing and New York. 你说什么？ And we will use the most useful archives to do the document. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thomas, you're a fairly new producer for the archives department at Svenska. Correct. My question to you is it harder to get started or to keep going? And what was the particular thing that you had to conquer in order to do either?
You mean working with archives in general or working with Reimagining or Archivet in specific?
Take your pick.
Well, I think there are very different challenges. The big challenge when it comes to the archives, it's such a massive thing. I mean, we have two official languages in Finland. We have the Finnish side, we have the Swedish side. So basically, you have to I can't speak. You have to become familiar with both of these sides. And they are a bit different culturally, and you somehow have to find a way to organize it in your head so that you can work with one process but handle two very different types of archives at the same time. So it's a lot about cooperation. And when it comes to a program like Torn from the Archives, it becomes challenging in the sense that you have to be the one that reins all these people in, because obviously Lotta is the one doing the lion's share of the work. and she has a team that helps her with the sort of gathering of information. My job is basically to, and this is the really, really hard one, is to sort of anticipate the pitfalls that come, because with an archived material on the Finnish side, you can have very different problems than when you have them on the Swedish side. Anything from copyright to lingual stuff, the fact that you have to translate certain parts or that you have to subtitle it in some way. And you're just keeping all these things together, because it is, Torn from the Archives is very much like a low budget program. It's sort of like an indie program within a large media corporation. And you have to be very careful, because you can make it into a huge production, like using all types of materials. And at the same time, it can become like a really, really small one. So you never know quite what your budget is going to land on. So things like this, and trying to keep all these people working with the archives together, and Lotta, letting her creativity flow, while at the same time sort of pulling in the reins all the time. You can't do that, you can't do that. Okay, you can do this, maybe. So that's the tricky part, is being like a sort of a father to everything, basically.
It's interesting. Yes, Lotta, do you have anything to add?
I think it's interesting because this theme is very wide. It's a long period of time, so we have to look after a lot of material. And then we search them from children's program, news, documentary, drama, anything. So I must admit that every program we have done, there has been a period of total chaos, and I must say thanks to the Post-its, because I think if I don't have had these Post-its, I wouldn't be here, because it has been very, very hard and difficult to organize the material.
Well, since you're talking about your experience, what would you say is the most important lesson that you had to learn while making this film?
To be very good at just throw away things and take the best pearls from the material.
Disposing of material.
Yeah, so actually, archive material can sometimes be dull and even boring, and I think we have done this, that we have just put them in a kind of a mixer, and then we have made something new of it. And it's rewarding, but it's a hard work, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
But I suppose, yes, of course, you're dealing with material that dates back. It's probably outdated, a lot of it, but it's incredibly significant. Now, how you put it to use is completely up for grabs, correct, Beard? I mean, the creative process is entirely up to you.
Absolutely.
And the case in question is Liam Wiley's The School Around the Corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, traditionally the use of archives is very much seen in maybe more the traditional television production output. And certainly for years and years we have supported that, and we have wanted to see our archive reshown as it first was broadcast, but also reused and reimagined in many different ways. I think a significant change that's happening in the archive community is that they themselves are taking the reins a little, and particularly in the digital world, we are having to become publishers, and not so much just publishers as well, but curators. And I think today we were talking about, I was at the workshop on data journalism, and one of the big words that came up was context. Context is everything. So much archives. Yes, there's material in there that's maybe not so worthy, dull, but the context often gives it a value that you didn't know it had, because you don't know why it's there sometimes. You may have offcuts, little clips, material that held in a film can. Why is it there? And when you start to mine that, you can begin to tell new stories from the archive. And I think that's maybe something for the future, is how we can actually tell stories from the archive that we didn't even know were there. And television production and directors bring incredible creativity to that process. I think the archives is beginning to employ some of those skills as well, and certainly in the nominee for this award, Liam Wiley, who is our senior producer and curator for the archives, we certainly saw that in this project.
Thank you. Thomas, back to you. What I want to ask you is, and it came to mind because you're not a filmmaker yourself, but anyone who makes film understands that it's really a collaboration as a whole. So what can you tell us about the collaborative process that underwent making Smoking?
Well, like I said, Lotta is the one that is sort of keeping everything together. She brings the ideas in collaboration with others. Perhaps that's where the most important part comes in, is where you sit down and you just talk to people and you think of ideas that you usually have a notion of yourself. This is the way I'm going to do it, and this is the way I think it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And then somebody else looks at it and goes, that sounds a bit boring. And I think that sort of collaboration is important, even when it doesn't lead anywhere. Maybe Lotta just has an idea and it is the best idea there is, but it's still this sort of going back and forth with the ideas. And then also, I know that, like Lotta said, there are different episodes made and there are different editors making them, so they all give a certain flavor to it. And what happens is, depending on this sort of person that makes the program, the collaboration also becomes very different. Some people like to have this conversation going, others just want to, shut themselves off completely, whereas yet other people might not even know what they want, so they can bring like tons of material to an editor and say, hi, please help me do something with this. So I think communication in general is just, I don't know, it's a very vague answer, I know. But basically talking to each other is the most important thing. And I think planning is something we're still going to work on for future episodes, as well as trying to establish the planning in an early stage, trying to get the right people, this sort of, thinking of the right topics to talk about. Like smoking is a very good topic because everybody knows smoking. So it's a really hard process to figure out those topics that you really, really want to get into, that you can get into deeply, but that you can also find materials for. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but...
Correct, yes. Would you like to add anything?
Yes, I think we have so many fragments and just bits and pieces today that it's very important to just put these fragments in some kind of interesting context. And I think this is the greatest challenge for this kind of programs, to give the whole. I mean, that we don't just have fragments because we can have a short laugh and then it's over. So we just want to give something more, to be thought-provoking and engaging and give new thoughts and combine the history with what happened today, what happens today.
And continues to happen.
Also, if I can add just one thing, another thing that's actually really interesting with an episode like Smoking is that one of the challenges is making archives accessible to young people. Usually you think of archives, you think of dust and you think of old everything, and it's not really exciting. And then when you have a program like Behind the or Torn from the Archives, then you can have this context and you can actually get young people interested in it in a way that you couldn't if you just show them a website. It's like, hi, go search. Here's an old clip from 1910. Go knock yourself out. It's just an excellent way of producing material for hopefully a young generation that will get interested in it. That's it.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to ask Sun a question about the archives of Mr. Sun, the master performer. I read that he himself was startled at finding certain images, certain footage that he never thought existed or still existed. So what I want to know is what has been the most inspiring or influential archive that you came across when making the film?
The film is related a story between one of the Beijing opera masters and his apprentices. OK，在这部片子当中呢，我们用了很多孙正阳最具代表性的一些资料，他的一个代表的剧目。
We use about many of the most important archives about the master of the Beijing opera 孙正阳。然后呢？
当中有一段资料是1946年的一段资料，这段资料呢非常的珍贵，是孙老师寻找了多年，然后都没有找到的一段资料。
And this is archives in 1914.
1914.
Yeah, 1914. And the archives is the Sun Zhenyang. Is the Sun Zhenyang found? What is the Sun Zhenyang found many times and should not find?
我们之所以要用这段资料，是因为这段资料对孙正阳的学生来说非常重要。
It is important to Sun Zhenyang's student. The archives is important to Sun Zhenyang's archives. It is not like the other objects. The essence of the Beijing opera must be taught in person. And as we all know, the masters of the Beijing opera are very old, and so we use the archives. And
he's in his 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
In his 80s. Yes.
Yeah. And the student will will learn something about the archives.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lotta, one final question, if you allow me. What advice would you give someone who wanted to have a life creating film? From your personal experience.
I think to believe in your own ideas, and to of course, when you make films, it's you have to cooperate with other people, but I think the most important thing is to believe in your own idea.
And Beard, from your experience with Liam, what do you think are the personal attributes that make for a good filmmaker?
Similar to what Lottie has said, I think it's being true to yourself, and creativity shines through, and pretense is always found out. So that truth comes through when somebody really believes and is passionate about what they do, and I think that shone through in our project, which was about bringing back something that was lost, but also making it sing again, making it have a new life, and I think. Yeah, you bring that to it, and you're tenacious as well, and the other thing that's possibly very important for archives, as much as filmmakers do, is you've kind of got to shout about it, but in a good way. Tell people what you do, and tell them how good you are.
Well, thank you all for being with us here tonight, for your participation in this year's conference, and we look forward to more inventive and creative projects from you, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Lotta would be happy about that. We're going to watch Lotta's winning film, Smoking. It's a half-hour film. So you're free here to sit and enjoy it. There's also free popcorn, as I know from Dorothy. So to make it a real cinema experience for everybody. So we're going to view, pulled from the archives, Smoking by Lotta Viglius-Wolf. So please enjoy the movie.